noble citizens, we must bypass a life of dormancy and vice to pursue the generative endeavor of a hard day's work. The benefits of these pursuits are not secured by chance or charity, but through the merit of your character and the firmness of your convictions. It is you who are planting the seeds of trees whose shade you know you shall never see.
Nice.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Happy Wheat Easter, everybody. What's up? It's the Broken Wind Podcast. Woohoo!
Easter special.
It's the Easter special, and we're as f***. And we got the main crew, the super producer, Mr. Vane himself, and the lovely Krokus.
Yo.
Here to chop it up.
I did take an edible and then realized right after I'd eaten it that I actually took 2 servings of that edible. So I'm celebrating.
We're in for a double dose of fun today.
Double dose of fun. Yeah, we were talking before you got on here, Vane, about how I am of the belief that YouTube comments section, remember how early in, like, I feel like the early 2000s when YouTube was really popping off, that was like the epitome of like insane internet cesspool in like a era where like 4chan had lost relevance. It was like these like, oh, don't look at the YouTube comments. Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
I've decided recently YouTube comments are coming back in a big way. That's the next big social media platform. If you're not out there, commenting, getting to know your colleagues in the YouTube comments space,
I never stopped.
You're missing out. This has been long on YouTube comments.
I've been very long on YouTube all this time.
Yeah. Well, I was also saying to her, too, that the YouTube Shorts world is fascinating cesspool, too, in like a very interesting early internet way, because you get exposed to a lot of very strange content filmed in what are clearly like third world industrial environments, like recycling, like plastic recycling plants. I have watched literal videos of what seem to be like 12 to 14-year-old children bending beams of metal in some kind of fabrication shop in India. And while I don't, condone child labor, obviously, it's child content making. I also don't condone, and it's just there's still just sort of an early internet charm.
But you're not seeking it out, like
thing.
It's just appearing before you.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's the power of the algorithm. And again, it's just like. There's just something about finding something that's like, oh, geez, that's shocking that I'm observing this. That's kind of what the internet's always been about. I feel like
it's rarer
just seeing
and rarer.
something that, yeah, right. Seeing something that's like truly novel, like, oh, I've never seen child labor. There you go. Like that's what that looks like. So, yeah, I don't know. Go get in the YouTube comment section, folks. That's what I'm talking about. And I wanted to actually use that as a segue to sort of talk about a real tentative optimism that I think Krokus and I were starting to feel, a real sort of like digital internationalism that's, again, not to be too optimistic, but it feels like this past week or so has been a solid one for less than terrible news. Mm-hmm. And there's been lots of like unexpected, like one topic I wanted for us to cover real quick was the iShowSpeed streamer visit to China. And for the listeners, we're going to get real parasocial this episode. We're going to be talking about streamers even more, so get ready for that. But are y'all familiar with how that all went? No? Well, the long and short, and not that I'm not 14, so I'm not an iShowSpeed viewer, but the magnitude of his popularity is crazy. It's really like hard to fathom on a level. And
he's also like vocally pro-Palestine as well, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. And he decided to go visit China for whatever reason. And
I did see that on Hasan, I think.
And since he doesn't work for the State Department, it didn't, make it look like a fucking human rights cesspit or whatever. It seemed like a advanced country with nice people who have a sense of humor and flying cars. And so he
really
went
cool
to visit
cars.
China. Yeah, they got crazy shit. Their electric cars are so much. They have a Chinese Trump. That's something. He linked up with Chinese Trump, which for the listeners, if you're not on the Chinese Trump page, get on YouTube Shorts, get in the YouTube comments section, start trying to dialogue with Chinese Trump, because Chinese Trump is the future. That's where I'm at. I think Chinese Trump is, considering we just watched the American Trump Great Leap Forward I feel like I don't know what role Chinese Trump has to play, but I think it's going to be important. I think we should really keep our eyes on Chinese Trump and what he's going to do for whichever country.
Yeah. And I'm sure our TikTok correspondent Krokus also saw the recent stuff that went popular. I only saw a little bit of it, but I have an example ready of the Chinese people basically talking to American people. We saw some of that earlier with the TikTok ban right before Trump.
Red Note. Right.
But recently, we saw some other videos of Chinese people talking back to Americans and letting them know that the tariffs are really just fucking us over and not them so much. And so I have a good example of that if you want to hear it.
Yeah, let's do it.
First, let me tell you, there's a Chinese Trump video, too, where he talks about it's peak comedy, where he's like, okay, the products, when they leave China, they're very cheap. I don't know what happens. I don't know why they're expensive when they get there. It's like, it's such a subtle, brilliant, play that clip. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think just in general, the Chinese people are taught to have a much better understanding of global politics and macroeconomics and things like that. So here we can clearly see.
A scientific one, if you will.
You might say a scientific understanding of the art of revolution. And that's what this guy is going to say
economics.
very, very eloquently, an average Chinese man.
I think I did see this.
They rob you blind and you thank them for it. That's a tragedy. That's a scam. That's why I'm saying this right now. Americans, you don't need a tariff. You need a revolution. For decades, your government and oligarchs won't ship your job to China. Not for diplomacy, not for peace, but to exploit cheap laborers. And in the process, they hollowed out your middle class, crushed your working class, and told you to be proud while they sold your future for profit. And yes, China made money, but we used it to build roads, lift millions out of poverty, fund healthcare, raise living standard. We reinvested in our people. My family also benefited from it. What did your oligarchs do? They bought yachts, private jets, mansions with golf course driveways. They manipulate the market, dodged tax, and poured billions into endless wars. And you get stagnated wages, crippling healthcare cost, cheap dopamine, debt, and flagged wave property made in China while they pick your pocket. For 40 years, both China and the United States benefit from the trade, the manufacturing, but only one of us use that wealth to build. This isn't China's fault. This is yours. You let this happen. You let the oligarchs feed you lies while they made you fat, poor, and addicted. Now they blame China for mess they made. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
humbling.
it, right? I think we can end the podcast
very humbling.
Now.
Might as well.
And thank you to that man, to that wonderful Chinese man for his dose of wisdom. I think humility is always appropriate for us hamburger-style Americans. I think that in general, the century of humiliation is going to continue to be a relevant historical parallel to what America is going through. And yet, as always, the parallels fall short in very important ways that make things very different, too, and hard to predict. But it's just, I think humility is overall an important value to foster within ourselves and within other, just to encourage people around us to not, to give up on American exceptionalism and the notion of individualist exceptionalism. And I want to return to that theme a little bit too when we get more parasocial later on.
He talks about it being addicted to things. Like, people kind of are also addicted to American exceptionalism in some way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like, it's
cheap
in the
dopamine
water here or something. It's bad.
Yeah.
Well, you can be very mediocre and lazy and still feel good about yourself. Mm-hmm. And that is exactly why fucking opium was awesome, too, and why any drugs are, unfortunately. Is you can be very mediocre and lazy and shit feels great all the time still, you know? Like, that's like, you're smoking opium. It rocks. So it's like, yeah. I mean,
It's a cheat code.
That's it. Yeah, it's literally, they're just cheating, and they think that that's how the economy should work, and they're addicted to cheating, and they don't understand that it's actually labor that creates value. And fucking Vane made a really interesting point to me earlier, and it's a little lofty in like its economic notion, but I realized recently, and I think I heard it from somewhere already, but like, part of the reason for the low wages of Southeast Asia, Vietnam, China, Cambodia, what have you, and this varies from country to country. Some are better at this, some are worse, but overall it's like the conception of a state in the post, especially after the Chinese Revolution, is very different. And especially, you know, geography affects the way in which states behave. And overall, when the costs of education and healthcare and housing are factored into the taxation structure of a country, in the long term, it drives labor costs down because people don't need to pay for that shit.
Right.
And so we've always talked about these people as if they are in abject poverty living in like shit piles, when the reality is that like maybe their existences in many parts of the world are worse. You know, I've seen what the, like, I wouldn't want to live in Vietnam necessarily, but at the same time, I don't think it's that much worse of a circumstance than what Americans have to look forward to within the next decade. And it's going to be worth, you know, learning from people who've lived that way with dignity for decades. Because it's not like it's this sort of like, it's exceptionalism to look at people in smaller homes with less like, you know, elaborate means of sustaining themselves and washing their you know, food and all that, and think like, oh, that sucks. It's like, yes, they would like nicer things, but it's also like there's still dignity in living like that, and people have lived like that for a very long time. And it's not like wrong, especially when they have electricity and, you know, more abundant food than their grandparents had and things like that. So I don't know.
As you said before, in following that theme of having some humility, I think really starting to look at the Chinese system as a model for the future post-Chinese revolution, as that Chinese man eloquently said, which is common knowledge to them. As you were alluding to before, the knowledge of scientific revolution is well understood among the common Chinese people. And we might say that this is teaching propaganda, but from their perspective, it's teaching the historical process of continuing revolution. And as we come to humble ourselves as Americans, we might find that actually their way of doing things is a lot more incremental than we actually give credit for. The reality is both sides of our political aisle distrust China on face value and reflexively don't give it the credit that it deserves as an incremental approach. But it turns out that socialism is already the most incremental approach. And if you put the cart before the horse, you actually have a failure. And that's what clearly China has learned from the failure of the Soviet Union was that the Soviet Union was ultimately tempted by the gains that come from a liberal society. And with that comes a wage increase, but that is an undeserved wage increase. As I was saying, putting the cart before the horse, that as you were alluding to earlier, a lot of Asian, more socialist countries appreciate the idea that a country with 4 times the population of the United States could not possibly consume. It could not bring its living standard up for its entire 1.4 billion people to match the level of us as consumers. And so in some ways, ever since even Carter, we've had presidents trying to do what these tariffs that Trump is implementing are crudely trying to do, which is ultimately to stop Americans from consuming, because there is no way around. It really is like a Gordian knot that has to be untied. And there is no way around descaling the American consumptive lifestyle.
Right.
And that's what China understands. By moving forward in the future, humans are not going to have the wasteful consumer mindset of Americans, that it would be okay to take labor from the third world and essentially just discard it immediately into a landfill, recognizing how wasteful that is. And now there's been a corruption in the ideology on both sides, that liberalizing on behalf of China is a corruption of the socialist ideology. And they are, to an extent, actually taking advantage of Americans through their state planning. That there is 100%. This ability to get easy money that doesn't really fit the model of socialism in its purest sense. It's part of their gradual transition to allow that compromise if we're also going to take advantage of it on our side. And so it's a mutually corrupting on both sides. It corrupts our own ideology of capitalism, and it corrupts their ideology. On both sides, it's truly deciding to liberalize for this idea of multinational globalism, which is a race to the bottom, a race to low wages and lower standards of living that China doesn't actually need to accept. And that's the real interesting thing that they have as an advantage moving forward with state planning.
Well, the other advantage you pointed out, this was what I was starting to get to earlier, and I thought this was really interesting, and it might be a bit of a lofty point, but the American role is essentially the consumer of last resort. It's been said many times, and the Chinese just don't consume the way we do. And yet the party and the Chinese state is in a position to effect the increase of wages for Chinese people, which does not equate to an increase in spending. And how the party affects a change like that, remains to be seen.
Yes.
But it's not like it's outside of their abilities. We've seen they have the ability to coerce capital to behave in ways that they want. We've seen that. And this could be a necessary thing to do as a part of fighting back against the trade war. And if that's the position that your ruling party is in politically, that you have all the factories and your goal is that you need to raise everyone's wages so that you can fight back against the trade war being waged on you by the world's largest capitalist power, that is the socialist mission in some ways too. That is evolving. That is exactly how it's been described. So
that's exactly how it would be prescribed, with a clear understanding of how socialism is supposed to work as a incremental process. That's exactly what you would expect China to do. And there's this suspicion for those who haven't taken the time to understand the scientific theory of social revolution, that they distrust every action that the Chinese do, when in reality, everything that they're doing is perfectly understandable from this incrementalist mindset of understanding that socialism is a long process to achieve communism, the higher stage of socialism, and that might come with some controlled liberalization. But this is the exact slippery slope that the Soviet Union managed to fall by essentially deciding that maybe it was time in the late 1980s to suddenly rise wages essentially for no reason, without having done the work to justify it, but to allow them to have a more, for lack of a better word, consumerist lifestyle. That opened the door for wanting to compete with the West in terms of their consumerism as well, when prior to that, that was not their goal as a shared national project. Nobody thought of it as the individual act of consumption was their expression of nationalism. But nationalism to them, under the Soviet Union and under a socialist project, is bringing everybody up all together.
That's so interesting. consumption as nationalism. What were you saying, Krokus?
I was saying it seems to me like they're also like, I don't know if I can say exceptionally good, probably I can, but certainly like a lot better than us at like educating their citizenry about this too. Because like as much as we over here are like they're doing weird suspicious things, people who live in China, I don't really think a lot of them feel like that. They like understand what the goal is. Like I don't know which ones of these went viral because I saw a lot of them just on TikTok, but there was one guy who I follow who came over from Red Note to TikTok when that was happening. And he was just replying like to MAGA people all day about all this stuff. And it was very good. Like he could work for the Chinese government for all I know, actually, like now that I'm thinking about it, but he good for him. But he was explaining literally this to someone. Someone was like, "Oh, but you do," and he was like doing the simplified version of explaining like we are socialists on our way to communism, and this is why we're doing this. Why we're doing this. And he was just, as far as I know, just some guy who lives in China. Like I said, he could work for them, but he's not presenting himself that way. You know,
there are robust Marxism degree programs in China, and companies hire these people not only to make sure they're in compliance with whatever the party dictates, but also to be able to anticipate and predict the necessity, like what will be necessary for a capitalist enterprise to be able to interface with the antagonistic state that they're trying to build their business with. You know, it's like, and that's beautiful in its own way. I want to get back to what you said, Vane, about consumption as American nationalism, because I think that's a very interesting, very good point that like so many Americans, that is their national identity. It's not proletarian. It's not even Iowan or something. It's consumer. And so much so that I think that's part of the mindset for the Trump team in imposing these tariffs is that we are the exceptional consumers. We are the country that is more exceptional at consuming than anyone else. And I think they are in for a rude awakening when they find that, like, actually, when presented with good deals on goods that are made domestically that they don't have to or are not allowed to sell for a profit to another country anymore, plenty of these countries may have more consumers than they realize. More people who are ready to, you know, get a nicer fucking fridge or whatever the fuck. Like, it's again, like, the delusion of American exceptionalism and the hubris before the fall.
Yeah, what that really is bourgeois nationalism as described by the socialist worldview.
Very true.
That is a lower stage of nationalism that we understand came to us from kings essentially dividing people up to kill one another, which we know has existed forever. But
basically centered around your ability to wield capital in a way that's deft and, you know, intelligent, but not necessarily. That's you know, what does that account for? Ultimately? Yeah,
and to shape your destiny as an individual, and in doing that, to make that a reflection of your national identity. Like, look how great and conquering our king is, and he is the nation, and so therefore we also are great and conquering people.
Right.
So it's like tying up your national identity in the pet project of a monarch, essentially.
Right.
When there is a higher understanding of nationalism that starts to emerge that you see in early socialist thinking like Lenin and Stalin, and then you see it later in the struggle as
internationalism.
Yeah, international socialism. And you see this in the identity crisis at the end of the Soviet Union as they're trying to struggle for their identity, that you see a reassertion of some people saying, hey, let's go back to like a Leninist, Stalinist idea of nationalism, which is international nationalism, and creating a common world order for everyone that we're proud of. And so what we're seeing now is more and more this idea of Chinese nationalism is going to be a tempting model for a future idea of nationalism, as the idea of class inevitably is transcended. If you truly do believe that in time we are going to overcome the excess of feudalism and kings slowly as time goes by through an incremental approach. And even if we have our setbacks, if you ultimately believe, as Marx did, in this progressive vision that ultimately democracy will overcome and the common man is going to overcome and take his rightful place in charge of the government, a government for the common man. If you believe that, then you start to be tempted by China's nationalism as opposed to American nationalism when they're both contrasted side by side. That American nationalism is consuming and throwing things in the trash and treating humans as disposable all around the world.
It's an evolution of European ethno-nationalism.
Is a forward-thinking nationalism that values people, and it has its problems, of course, but if perhaps the Scandinavian countries start to see this as a model that fits with their idea of socialist, capitalist, mixed economy, that, hey, China is taking a clear step right now to reduce the effect of billionaires while raising up the lower standards. And over the past 30 years, they've had a tenfold increase in their minimum wage, which goes back to why we were talking about the advantages that China has. That's another clear one that I was seeing. Even American CEOs they're not confident that they can train Americans to do what the Chinese have done over the last several decades by educating their population with an advanced modern economy. That even if those machines were to suddenly be here, it's going to take time for Americans to learn to use these machines. And I heard it said that essentially they could fill football stadiums with skilled Chinese workers, whereas they would struggle to find rooms in the United States of skilled workers of this caliber. And that's just a testament to falling behind in terms of educating the workforce.
And that's what I was going to say is, like, America cannot adopt the Chinese nationalism at all. There's no way to adopt that without first fully rejecting American nationalism and ethno-nationalism and like the American exceptionalist identity that is based on the colonial entity of the United States. That's why I always come back to wipe the late spleen, new constitution. That's why I always come back to that. Did y'all hear the fucking J.D. Vance comments about the fucking saying like our money's been taken by Chinese peasants? Did y'all hear that?
I did. Called them peasants. I didn't hear the whole quote.
Oh my god, where's the quote? We should read.
Okay, can I bring us
fucking bullshit.
Maybe,
what were you gonna say?
Maybe Butler already started, but can I bring us back from the broad scope of all of human history back down to like the short term?
Please.
Okay, I'm curious what y'all's thoughts are on two things so there's two things that in terms of popular culture have really broken through. I think they're related when it comes to China and people in the U.S. learning about China, right? One of them was the Red Note thing with the TikTok ban. Yeah. And the other one is happening right now due to the tariffs and all the conversations we were just having. Like that speech that you played, Vane, I heard portions of that played on NPR this week. Like,
Holy
it's like,
shit, that's crazy.
It's like
going viral,
right? So
that's crazy.
Yeah, so these things are like breaking through. People are engaging directly with Chinese people for many of them the first times in their lives, and they're having a good time doing it, like one way or another. Like
they're cool, they're funny, they have a Trump,
right?
So around that phenomenon, right? My questions are: why do you think that's happening now? Besides, like these, like, is there a general like cultural reason why people are more willing to engage with the idea that China is like not some evil entity in America, right? And then secondarily, what opportunities does it create in the short term for like people like us, or if you're just like having conversations with people who are maybe just for the first time being like, oh, China's doing some cool stuff, right? Like, what do we do with that opening, you know?
Well, at least in the immediate, like in our context, what it does that I think is so important and makes me excited and cautiously optimistic, returning to that, is that it expands the political imaginations of people and forces them to, on some level, reconsider their preconceived notions. And both of those things require, again, the rejection of the American exceptionalist identity, the rejection of like a level of humility that people aren't always ready for. But when they are, and they're exposed to that stuff, then it makes them question, like, what have I been told? Like I said at the start, is like this sort of like digital internationalism that it flickers in and out of possibility, but does have its usefulness. And I think in moments of crisis especially, it's a great way of like just demystifying. The game of nationalism involves constantly convincing people that people very, very far away from them do not like them and have it's you know what the terrorist identity exists to do, right? Is to convince people that there's this nation full of people who fucking hate you for your freedom. And the digital internationalist like power of social media that does have its limits. It's not a replacement for organized movement, but it has a way of demystifying other people and other places that I think is it makes me happy. I love to see it. It really, really fucking does. And it has a way of seemingly putting political pressure on people. I don't know if there's other points you wanted to make on that too, Vane, but I want to talk about Kilmar after that too, because I think that's related.
Yeah, it just makes it so clear that I think that the Chinese people don't consider us their enemy. Yeah. And that the Chinese are still focused on the class struggle. Yeah. And that's so foreign to us that we're fighting on our left-right political lines and having these national conflicts. We have a president who's suddenly attacking our allies and doing all these completely unhinged, surprising things. And the Chinese people are saying, I have an explanation for it. And it's the reason why we had our revolution and why we continue to learn about this struggle to this day and need to continually reevaluate our process of fighting this struggle because it's an ongoing process, the class revolution. And it did not happen spontaneously. And so that means that it has to be constantly reinvigorated, and the population needs to buy into the socialist project together. And to them, that is nationalism. The idea of being able to teach their people about the common nations project, to teach about their struggle, to come to their national identity, and all of that is wrapped up within their understanding of themselves and what they try to teach. And so it's completely foreign, the idea that we're just attacking them out of nowhere. And you essentially have many Chinese people setting the record straight like him. And that's what's awesome about having an interconnected world with technology, that we end up having people set things straight in this way and say, our battle is not with the U.S. as a nation. Our battle is still the ongoing class struggle. And clearly you should focus on that instead of focusing on whatever national projects your new monarchy wants you to pursue.
Right. Yeah.
Cool stuff.
Yeah. And like I said, too, I think this dovetails nicely with the good news that came this week about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And I want to, start this part of the discussion by saying fucking free him, bring him home. This is like such a pivotal issue to keep the pressure on, because they are still not relenting despite these like little victories. They are claiming that even if he lands on U.S. soil again, they're going to turn his ass right around. And it's fucked beyond belief. And like, I have a hard time believing it's an accident that like this guy is, I guess it was an accident, but it's like, the fact that he is like a union member and also a like father of multiple disabled children, it's like he's the perfect kind of fucking person that they are going to victimize. He's exactly who they're fucking going for. And like, this is what, to quote what Hasan's been saying about this, it's very true that like once Americans are exposed to the realities, the violence that is innate to any kind of population relocation, one of the most fucking basic lessons about violence in politics that was supposed to have been learned after fucking World War II, there is no way to relocate a population that is not an inherently violent, genocidal process. That is something that has been settled fucking fact, at least we thought. They can't fucking get their heads around it now.
And you'll certainly use that to criticize Stalin, won't you?
Yeah, right? And like when exactly. And it's like when you see an individual going through what this man is being put through, it's absolutely fucking sickening. And I forget the name of the senator who went down to visit him, but fucking
Chris Van Hollen.
Yeah, Van Hollen.
Shout
out.
Shout out. Kudos to him. That was the right move. And it fucking, to a limited extent, had some effects, like the fact that they staged the fucking margaritas. Like,
we got the margarita gate.
Who do you think that
got another gate this week.
Do we know who the third person was that was at the table with them?
I don't know.
No,
actually, I don't know.
I didn't question that. Good question.
I don't know who it was either, but I was wondering if it was someone who was monitoring what. Because I actually have you guys heard details of what they were actually able to talk about when he did meet with him? Because I've not seen that. I've been a little bit offline the past couple of days.
I've not heard much details except that about the trauma thing. I think that's come up multiple headlines that he's traumatized. Yeah. That he was relocated from CCOT. Yeah. That he was relocated from there to another El Salvadorian prison. So he's no longer in CCOT out of fear for his safety. And Bukele staged the margarita photos, wanted to do it at the beach, apparently, to make it appear that he was taking really good care of him and that it was nothing like a vacation almost. Yeah. And shared it on his social media.
This is the move of someone who's feeling very confident, who's feeling like they're definitely making good political moves. That's what you do. Totally. Is you try and stage something like that.
While also it's interesting to see, I think, in general, along the theme of this being a good week where we've seen some pushback and we've seen the administration start to hit some of its limits. And I think hopefully as we round out, we'll talk about a few of those themes where it's hitting its limits. There's multiple areas right now that we got a glimmer of hope over the last week or so of that. And one of them is Trump denying, this is a major theme, I think, but Trump denying any accountability now in the Abrego Garcia. Did you recently see that?
Oh, yeah. The
picture of the knuckle tattoo as well. Like, they're throwing everything they fucking can at this. Digging up his fucking wife's claim about, like, him tearing a shirt and something like that. That was something that she claims was a part of just a marital dispute that they have settled since then. It's like, it's such, like, grimy Jerry Springer ass bullshit that they're doing to these poor people when it's like, don't you fucking people believe in like forgiveness or anything? Like what kind of again, like people claiming the mantle of Christianity, we can check this on Easter Sunday. It's like fuck you fucking pieces of shit for treating this man this way. I don't care if he wasn't fucking MS-13. He definitely has kids to feed. He definitely has a family to take care of. So fuck off, bring him home. Like it's fucking infuriating.
Yeah, and as part of the limits that we're seeing now, the administration starting to hit. We just saw a 1 a.m. decision made by the Supreme Court putting a hold on their use of the Alien Enemies Act, saying that they can't deport anyone. And for them to issue that at 1 a.m.
They can't deport anyone else to CCOT? Is that what that's about? Is that the goal for that?
They can no longer, as of now, until the Supreme Court hears the full alien and sedition trial, they can no longer deport people without any pretense, without any due process. The Supreme Court put that hold on them.
When did that happen?
And ever since then, that was late last night, very recent, or the night before. Yeah. They made a rare late night ruling, which was essentially a check on Donald Trump saying, get your ass in line. Like, we weren't expecting you to go this far, this fast. In terms of essentially trying to build your own concentration camps immediately. Yeah, well, and so there's a check by the Supreme Court saying you need to uphold these federal. That's one of the major areas that we're seeing a check now is in the federal courts. They finally pushed back and said you can't just deport people without any due process. We're going to hear that before you do any more deportations, which I think is a great place where the steam now is being taken out of Trump.
Yeah, I mean, it's more tentatively good news.
I think also, like, the right-wing media is having a really hard time figuring out how to spin this properly, and that's really hurting them a lot.
Exactly.
Honestly. Like, did you see the clip of Greg Gutfeld talking about Kilmer Abrego Garcia, and he sounded like a total supervillain. And like every time that they try to be like, this isn't a big deal, they come off as absolutely evil to anybody that's not like completely red-pilled already.
Yeah. They had that fucking piece of shit lady talking about her daughter getting murdered by a different fucking guy. And it's like, you guys, people are smarter than this. This isn't 1930s Germany. These people aren't one generation away from being German peasants. No disrespect to German peasants, but like, fucking,
not quite
these
that
people
racist
are a little
anymore.
more shrewd than that. They know what you're fucking trying to do. And I want to take, can we just take, before we get too into the courts, I want to take a second to address Nayib Bukele. I want to address him personally. I know he listens, and
Sub to the
What
Patreon.
the fuck do you... Yeah, exactly. Subscribe to the Patreon, Naive Bukele. We know you're pirating the show, but it's cool. But anyway, like, what the fuck do you think you are doing? You're dealing with the United fucking States. Do you think you have more sauce than, like, Colonel Gaddafi? Do you think you're going to come out of this deal alive in the green, you fucking idiot? Why don't you look at every single person who's tried to make these kind of deals? Why don't you look at fucking Saddam Hussein, motherfucker? What do you think is in your future? Good luck living through the next decade, you fucking repellent piece of shit.
Or the Philippine... Duterte was just tried for a very similar thing in the ICC, tried for war crimes.
They're going to use you up and throw you in the garbage because that's what they do. And everyone's got the message by now. I don't know what the fuck you're on that you think you can outsmart these motherfuckers, but just because they're the stupidest administration we've ever had doesn't mean they don't have all the fucking guns and all the fucking goons. So you're fucked. Less than a decade. That's what I'll put on Nayib Bukele's life. He is done. And, like, moves like this, like I was saying,
either
the margarita
that
photo.
Or by his own people.
Right, but, like, the margarita photo, that is not the move of a sober man who's not at all concerned about his political prospects. That's to me, there's a desperation to a move like that I really, that was the thing that really made me happy about that. Like, he tweeted that personally.
And that's what I think is, I don't think that Donald Trump was expecting the amount of public pushback that he's gotten so early on. And I think we're seeing him cave in many ways, starting to, in this game of chicken that he's playing. He just distanced himself from what's been going on with Garcia and said, actually, I have nothing to do with that, even though everybody saw him in the press conference with Bukele and knows that he has a lot to do with it. But you see him now starting to distance himself. You saw his administration with Harvard just denying that they had sent this letter to Harvard. And I'm assuming it's because they figured out that letter is illegal. And Harvard just said to them, we actually know that you doubled down on this motherfucker, and we're taking you to court now over this. And you're finally starting to see the administration see where the cracks are. The Supreme Court saying, hang on a second, you're not just deporting people and ignoring our court orders. We're going to hear about this question of the Alien Enemies Act, and you're no longer going to act with complete impunity at this point. Yeah. And you're seeing it push back within his own Senate now, and we're seeing kind of everywhere starting to all at once push back, which is pretty great to see, heartening to see at this point.
Yeah, it is. It is.
The astrology
I
this
think
week
also
is good.
talking
I'm
about...
sure there'll be another week in the future where we'll be like, nothing will ever go right again.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing's going well. Yeah.
We're not in the clear. There was concerns that by today he was going to declare martial law. I don't know if anyone heard those conspiracy theories that on 420 he was going to declare martial law. Thank goodness it doesn't seem that that's the case. And that might be because of the pressure that you guys have put on this administration is more than he was expecting.
I can't see these assholes taking over the government after 5 p.m. I don't know about you guys.
I was going to say the day's not over yet. Like,
Pete
as soon as we're done recording, it's going to be like, oh shit, we just all got a push notification for martial law.
Yeah, we're not in the clear. We all are breathing a little sigh of relief, but I think that ultimately we're going to have some more scares. We're going to see him threaten martial law a lot more. But at least right now, he's starting to get a little bit of red light from the courts saying that they won't allow him to, at this moment, without any emergency, declare martial law.
Yeah, we're definitely getting the military parade for the birthday. That's happening, but whatever.
When is that? I don't even want to know what his birthday.
Yeah, what is his birthday?
Fuck that. Who cares?
Do you think that
you guys don't want to wish the president a happy birthday? Wow.
Is it his birthday today?
That's classic fucking It's like the line with the kid who was sick at his State of the Union address. I've been thinking about how theatrical that State of the Union address was. It was almost like it's his own weird homage to like Phantom of the Opera. But there's been something so funny about all these conservatives being like, wow, you see these Democrats aren't even clapping for a little kid with brain cancer who wants to be a cop and we made him be a cop. It's like so like elaborate and stupid sounding. It's like something a high school, like a middle school kid like makes up that like it's like and then he wouldn't even fucking clap for he had brain cancer and he wouldn't want to be a cop and when they made him a cop and he wouldn't even clap. It was so hit him.
I really like
and that's
the pivoting on the whole like snowflake insult. I feel like it's really starting to be more fitting for MAGA people at this point. Like
soy right versus dark
totally
woke.
is.
That's the dynamic now. It's fucking sick. I'm here. This show is very dark woke. I'll say that. I think this is a dark woke show. I don't know about you guys. I think that can be the tag we can put on the show.
dark gothic woke.
Goth woke, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we've been seeing some of the institutions push back in general, like seeing academia led by Harvard pushing
speaking
back.
Of institutions that are pushing back, I think we should get a little parasocial and talk about some institutional YouTube channels that have started pushing back against other institutional YouTube channels. And seeing as Vane is probably the person with the realest job amongst all of us, I don't know how aware are you of the ongoing, I know you're a Hasanabi head, so how aware are you of the Ethan Klein-Hasan conflict? And are you aware of the most recent development involving a YouTuber called iDubbbz? Does any of this make any sense, or does it sound like I'm schizophrenic? He's looking very concerned.
This is exactly like
I mean, I know about the Ethan
husband.
Klein, but the iDubbbz, let me know.
Well, Ethan Klein and Hassan's conflict, I think, even if this is like the most parasocial dorky shit, me and Krokus have been wanting to do this segment forever, and
I didn't know you were with
so
me on this. I was asking about it in Discord, and I was like,
I'm so with you,
man,
because
I thought if I could talk to anyone about this, it would be one of these two guys.
Well, it's just like such an interesting crossover of like social media drama bullshit and international geopolitics. And Ethan Klein is like a fascinating cipher for the schizophrenic breakdown of the Zionist consciousness in the West, and where it runs up against the boundaries of what a stupid and short-sighted and essentially failed idea European ethno-nationalism is. It is a dead fucking end, and it has been since the Nazis fucking tried it and before that. And Ethan Klein is so emotionally invested in that conflict that he can't find... It's fascinating how incoherent he's been all throughout this, and it's not like I've been watching him closely, but then... Are you aware of who iDubbbz is?
No, I'm not.
So this is a very foundational YouTuber. There's like prestige YouTube channels.
I have another
at this
question
point.
he's going to say no to. Do you know what Content Cop is?
There you go, yeah.
Okay.
No. Let me know. Fill me in.
Exactly. Like,
no, yeah,
to
it's
explain.
nerd shit. Like, it's niche, like, early 2000s YouTube shit. And iDubbbz...
It's not that niche. It was massive.
No, you're right. It's not really that niche, but it was, like, very popular
like
YouTube
early
drama content that was produced by...
It was like peak time.
By this guy named iDubbbz, who is like your archetypical like internet white guy who's got like that very cynical, sardonic sense of humor.
Very edgy guy.
Edgy, for sure. And he put out these videos that were called Content Cop that were essentially just him dragging some other creator for one reason or another. Sometimes valid, sometimes not.
Sometimes
and
a combination
for the most part,
of the two.
Right, exactly. Sometimes it was valid, but how he was doing it was problematic. There was a lot of that. And iDubbbz went through a very interesting arc in his career where he cultivated this one very reactionary audience and then got into a relationship and started being less of a reactionary person and thus not wanting to feed and cultivate that audience anymore. And he actually has a separate channel where he did a whole bunch of videos of him like catching squirrels in his yard, and I've followed that pretty closely. So I'm a iDubbbz head here. Right? Like he's a very funny dude. And
he's cool
so
now.
the iDubbbz original... Yeah, so Content Cop, the takeaway for you is that Content Cop is like a foundational series in the YouTube drama sphere. Like it is one of the most important early parts of that specific genre.
And he stopped doing it because it was basically too mean, too cruel, not like his style anymore. And he specifically
not what he wanted to do.
has come out and said in recent years that he's sorry for a lot of the times that he did it, and he's never going to do it again. Because it's not like really in his like he's just grown up, like he's an adult now, and he like you know,
because even if the people he was talking about were worthy of ire in some way, they were usually like smaller creators where it's like this power dynamic that he wasn't really addressing.
So nobody ever thought there was going to be another one ever again.
Exactly, everyone thought that shit was gone, and then live on Hassan's stream, another fucking H3 Content Cop comes out because Ethan Klein and iDubbbz are of a similar era of YouTube. They've done videos that have collaborated. They have worked together in the past. Yes, and Ethan Klein, in his extended breakdown, has made sure to call out as many people as he can who've remained silent throughout this, because to him that is an unacceptable betrayal of a friendship. So he made sure to call out Ian of iDubbbz multiple times, and this is the result of that, which was an 1.5 hour long video of iDubbbz basically explaining and dissecting all of Ethan Klein's, like, why he's going fucking crazy and driving everyone around him fucking crazy in such a way that was, like, much more removed and less ideological than anything Hasan ever does.
Or any of the people who like, usually, like, you know, there's a lot of very pro-Palestine creators who are right now using the whole Ethan Klein drama to talk about Palestine, which I think is really smart because it gets views. But, like, iDubbbz was, like, approaching it kind of on a much more interpersonal level. Like, he clearly is sympathetic. I was going to
say, like, a friend telling you, like, you're being fucking crazy. Yeah, like...
Which was interesting. Right. And it made him completely lose his fucking mind even more. Like, he's done, it took him several hours to get through like 15 minutes of the video on stream. Also, the only thing I don't enjoy about this beef is both of these people, not iDubbbz, but Hasan and Ethan, are live so many fucking hours a week that you cannot keep up with everything that they fucking say about each other, especially Ethan.
Right. And it's not even worth it. It's truly not even worth it. It's just been a fascinating thing to observe because, like we talked about, like, it's easy to miss how momentous this is and the kind of, like, audiences that are being targeted specifically by something like iDubbbz releasing a content cop for the first time in, like, almost a decade.
And it's got a ton of views, by the way. It actually surpassed...
Yeah, like, it's a big fucking deal.
Ethan's big, long, stupid video that he made as, like, this, which was a play on Content Cop, by the way. What do you call it? Like, content news?
Exactly. Great point. Yes, the Ethan Klein video that was also quite well known of him just going for being like, I didn't know Hasan was a socialist.
He was a left-leaning Democrat. Like, what?
Right, like, that deranged video, the content nuke, that's a play on Content Cop, because, like, again, like, that is a genre that iDubbbz pioneered. And so this being, it's not going to be the last installment in the saga, but I feel like for any sane people who aren't, like, completely, like, fully fucking dug in on the Ethan Klein side of things, then this is a pretty fucking definitive death blow. Especially with Hasan live streaming on stage with Kneecap at Coachella
that weekend.
This weekend too. That was fucking awesome. I had never heard Kneecap before, but their shit rocks. So we'll throw there's another, you know, free plug for you out there, Kneecap. We like what you're doing. Keep it up. And they had, like, Fuck Israel, Free Palestine on the stage at that show too.
Yeah, thank you for listening to the podcast, Kneecap.
Yeah, thank you, Kneecap, for your support on the Patreon. But we fucking love you guys. Swangafol, you know, you're awesome.
Right.
So
and as a way to round it out, I'd like to just show how all that is sort of a microcosm of bad faith mentality, that essentially you can see it as the same way that both parties end up attacking the socialists who have a scientific knowledge that they are correct and that their approach is level-headed and incremental and taking into consideration all the necessary aspects from both sides. And what you have in partisanship is a bad faith, dishonest actor, essentially, who tries to smear this idea of socialism in recognizing them to be actually correct and needing to attack that as an existential threat.
Yeah.
So I think you have the same thing of creating like a straw man against Hasan and saying, oh, I didn't know he's a socialist.
Right.
And with that comes essentially the working backwards from the assumption that socialism is inherently bad, when the reality is that sometimes if you have some humility, you would recognize that the side that you're labeling as inherently bad is actually correct, and that it's your dishonesty internally that causes you to reflexively work backwards and find alternative explanations to explain why socialism couldn't possibly correct what it actually is. And I think that a good example of that goes back to like the China tariffs that ultimately China, I think, is at an advantage with these tariffs because it ultimately causes national unity. And
international
they are
unity.
International and national unity within, because now they have an outsider attacking them unprovoked. Whereas on the other side, the tariffs that we implemented have caused nothing but confusion, even within Donald Trump's own party, that you have Republicans not knowing how long these are going to be in place, what they actually are going to be when it all works out, what the tariff rates are. And it serves to cause nothing but division and confusion. Whereas having the scientifically correct position means we're not going to argue over tribalist issues. We understand that we've found a way to move past this tribalist nonsense where you're able to only look at one aspect of things and use it to argue fundamentally against the other side. And I think that you can see that happening in personal relationships as well, like what you see between Ethan and Hasan, that it's like, essentially, I'm just going to smear you the way that both the Republicans and Democrats smear China, and assume that they don't have any understanding of what they're talking about and that they must be inherently bad faith, when it's actually you who is unwilling to be humble and look at the places where maybe you're incorrect.
It's really like a lot of projection, because like it is with Ethan, but I think it kind of like, because they are like, well, I've never known what I'm doing for one moment in my life, so obviously everyone is like that also. Right.
And it's like when we attack China, both parties tend to attack China with the same element of bad faith that Ethan does to Hasan. And it's like, have we not seen any more clear vindication than the past couple weeks that every single thing that we were supposedly afraid of China doing to more excess, that there's no part of that we are not concerned about right now in the United States, that we are concerned China locks people up without any due process. What's going on right here as we talk about the Abrego Garcia case? So it's constantly those who live in glass houses should not throw stones.
Yeah, exactly. And humility.
Essentially, there's a willingness to criticize the other side in pure bad faith when you can't really look at any aspect of American society anymore and compare it to China in good faith and not say, oh, we've gone to more excess. We have not only more people in jail per capita, but we actually have more people in jail, that our political system has necessitated that a higher number of people have to go in jails to withstand the political friction that our system causes internally. And China, unless you look at them in pure bad faith and think that they could hide double or triple or even maybe quadruple the number of people in jail that they are saying that they have, it strains credibility, essentially, to start to distrust them and to say, oh, they could somehow hide prisons of 3 times the size of their actual population. It really strains your credibility. And when you look at places like El Salvador or the United States, it's like we're really one to talk then, that they've managed to lock up a much smaller portion of their population. Unless you're willing to say that all statistics be damned, I don't trust anything that they say, and just continuously operate backwards from that in bad faith and say, well, their number must be more than double, must be more than triple what they're saying that they have incarcerated. I mean, if you're taking things at a reasonable expectation, how many people can they possibly be lying about in jail? And it goes to show that maybe we really ought to look at our own system.
Right. And it's like, that's always the part of it. It's like, at the end of the day, it's like,
humility.
Whatever the fuck they're doing wrong, I'm sure they're doing some things wrong. Why is it my place to be like, why does it always have to be our place as Americans to be like, when we have so many, and that becomes almost this like isolationist nationalist argument if you're not careful. But just when you remove the exceptionalism from it, that's just like, I wanted to sort of, I've had this thought bouncing around my head that I think about a lot with Israel And it happens in China, too. Like, there's the criticisms of China that, like, Han nationalism's a real thing aren't entirely invalid, even if, like, it is a much more multicultural and diverse place and certainly not in a fucking apartheid state. But at the level of, like, because we know what ethno-nationalism looks like at the macro level. We know what ethno-supremacy looks like at the macro level. We've seen those countries and how they behave. At the micro, like, interpersonal level, I was thinking about this as, like, part of the idea of like a nationalist exceptionalism at a micro interpersonal level is just familial exceptionalism and just feeling like you're a part of a family or group that is exceptional in some way compared to others out there. And that's this own like pernicious thing that you have to be aware of. That's like, even if you are a part of a great family, it doesn't mean that other families are any less deserving of a place in this world or of, you know, peace and security and shelter. And if you're being convinced that their peace and security and shelter is at the expense of your peace and security and shelter, you should be questioning the person who's informing you of that. It's probably not the fucking people on the ground doing that to you at the end of the day. And that's hopefully something that can help people be more aware of. I don't know. I feel good these days. Happy Weed Easter, y'all.
Weester.
Yeah, I think we could also quickly just tie in our English working conditions discussion and humility and science. That really, if you are China in this example, you're again in this situation where you happen to have the scientific knowledge and other people are critiquing you in bad faith and saying, oh, your solution couldn't possibly be the solution. But taking the English working conditions, which was written in 1845 by Engels, just taking that and saying, hey, there's a clear causation and correlation between inequality in the cities and the resulting crime rate. We can pretty clearly and conclusively point to this and say with scientific certainty that the more inequality we have in a society, the higher the crime rate is. So and as inequality increases in the industrial era, we're tracking this and observing in a 30-year period a 7-fold increase in crime that is not following anywhere near the rate of population size. So it's clearly getting worse. There clearly is a scientific explanation for it. And again, if you're on the side with the answers that really knows it, you're already approaching it from a dialectic approach, from a scientifically prescriptive approach, knowing that this is a process. And so you're already taking the best parts of both sides' critique into full consideration. And it just seems that their criticisms are in pure bad faith at this point to be levying on socialism. If you're not going to read it and you're not going to try to understand the dialectic nature of socialism and how it's already encapsulated your own argument into a broader scientific understanding, then don't bother. Just don't bother arguing against it. It's not worth it. Has
got to head out soon. Did you have anything you wanted to plug or update us on from TikTok before we let you go?
No, but I did really want to say that I've just noticed while you guys were talking, I've realized that none of us, I don't think, has said that South African billionaire's name once in this episode. And I just want to say that I'm really reveling in his fading relevance. And so I don't want to break that make that irrelevance happen any faster by talking about him now. But it's just really good to see.
Yeah, keep him irrelevant.
To not have him in my mind. So.
Yeah, cautious optimism. I agree.
That's another upside this week.
Couple weeks for him.
Other than he had that thing.
Tariffs coming.
Yeah, we did find out a little more about his, what is that, like natalism or whatever?
His, like, freaky baby ranch,
his obsession with freaky randomly messaging girls and asking them if they'll carry his seed. People he's never met before.
It's, like, not that different from a lot of men's behavior online, but he's, like, really serious.
Truly the
that's the only news I've heard of him, and that's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing, and it's also like not actually important, like the shit he was doing before. like it's obviously it's important to
the Trump team saw that and they're like
those people, but not the whole country. But
and also they scaled back their estimations with Doge of how much they could cut from 1 trillion to 150 million.
Oh my god!
Big surprise there. After firing half the fucking workforce.
fuck off. Oh my god. Well, yeah, nice to not be hearing from his ass too much anymore. Cautious optimism. Again, that's been, I think, the theme of this week. So I'm hoping for more of that. Yeah, I think that's a good place to leave it. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, hosts. Nayib Bukele, subscribe to the Patreon. You specifically, the negotiations with whatever that girl was from the Brett Cooper. Those have broken down. I'm now trying to negotiate with Chinese Trump to be our fourth mic. So look out for that.
I flipped off a Cybertruck today.
We're bringing Chinese Trump
That's
in.
Good.
Yeah. In summary, I'd say he's breaking down in at least 3 fronts: in the courts, among the institutions like Harvard and the Ivy League, and then also within his own population, public opinion. I guess also the it ties into the courts, but the Abrego Garcia, all crumbling, all finding out he's hitting his limits.
Yeah, that has been a losing battle, and here's to more losses on that front. But let's go enjoy the rest of our Weed Easter. Yo, by the way, Vane, if you haven't listened to Kneecap too, as well, that band we were mentioning before, they're like Irish Republican rap. They're so sick. You'll dig it. They're so good.
All right.
But yeah, check out Kneecap. Have a good Weed Easter to everyone. Go touch some grass, and thank you for listening. Subscribe to the Patreon, and good talking, folks. Let's talk again soon. Bye.
Bye. I'm gonna go watch Roller Derby.
I like the mean, so we settle for them greens. Yeah, I'm high like the tree. When I send it to my knees, I don't sway with the breeze. They can't send me to my knees, yeah. Don't stop. You can't shake this off. Don't stop. They can't touch this.